Hello, everybody. I believe we're live. Welcome to Creation Myths, where we take creation science and creation scientists seriously for just long enough to understand why they're wrong. So we are going to talk about the waiting time problem tonight. I'm just confirming that YouTube has sound, which it appears it does, so I think we're good. So, before we get started, let me introduce the panel, or have the panel introduce themselves. So, joining us tonight, we have TDLane, the Dapper Dinosaur, and David Neff. TDLane, introduce yourself to the world.
I'm TDLane. I exist. That is all.
Well done.
Thank you for joining us. Dapper, who are you?
Hey guys, I'm Dapper Dino. You might have heard of me. I have a channel. It's called Dapper Dino. It's not the one that does the coding tutorials. It's the other one, the one that busts young Earth creationism and sometimes New Age pseudoscience stuff, and then every once in a while medical pseudoscience stuff. Like recently on my 5K subscriber special, we had a woman who had a dream about eating poison to get rid of her breast lump that may have been cancer.
Thank you. And David Neff.
Hello, I'm David. Thank you so much for having me on the stream tonight. I am a student at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where as I said, I will be a student, and I'm starting my first semester there in August, so I'm really excited. I am a biology student there, and I am very interested in evolutionary biology and viruses, so that is the direction that I'm thinking about going.
And that just makes me so happy to hear because, evolutionary biology and viruses is, kind of my thing. So I approve. So tonight's topic, everybody, is the so-called waiting time problem, which has become kind of the thing that creationists are doing over the last couple of months. There's, as you can see, our friend Rob Carter here, Dr. Rob Carter from CMI, Creation Ministries International, put out a video on the waiting time problem. And there was also a paper recently published, or soon to be published online. I think it's actually for an upcoming edition of the Journal of Theoretical Biology. And this is a paper on the waiting time until coordinated mutations get fixed in regulatory sequences by Oster, who I don't know who that is, but then the other two authors are Gunter Beckley and Anne Gauger. I don't know how to pronounce her name. But
Gunter Beckley, I'm expecting the best.
So Beckley and Gauger are both Discovery Institute affiliated. So that'll be we're getting the young Earth perspective on this, and we're getting the intelligent design perspective on this. So it's interesting that we actually have two examples of these exact same sets of claims coming out in such short order from kind of two different wings of the modern creationist movement. So before we get into the video, we're going to go through and just kind of hit the high notes and see why Carter is wrong about just about everything he says. And then we'll go over to the paper and see how they make the same errors. Before we do that, I want to go down the panel because I see people in the chat actually asking, what is the waiting time problem? Because it's weird that two different places have this pop up at the same time, because in terms of creationist arguments, this one is a little bit on the obscure side. So I want to start with the panel. Has anyone heard of the waiting time problem, and what is your understanding of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it, and I know it's came up in some of the debates that I've been in. So basically, the argument goes like this: within the rate of mutations and the accumulation of mutations is simply too slow to have happened over 7 million years. There's simply not enough time for all of this evolution to have occurred. Therefore, there must be an intelligent designer. Therefore, young Earth, something like that. So that's pretty much the argument in a nutshell.
And just to clarify, the 7 million years, typically this argument is framed around the human-chimp divergence from a common ancestor, which like 7-ish million years ago, give or take. I'm actually not up on what the consensus date is, but I know it's fluctuated anywhere from like 5 to 6 all the way up to like 10 to 12 million years. I don't know where the consensus is right now.
We need Gutsick Gibbon here.
I know. I was going to say we need Gutsick Gibbon in here. She would know, like that. And Just a Walking Fish would also probably know, but neither one of them could join us tonight, it seems. So somewhere in the 7-ish million year range is what we can go with. Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. It's the idea that you have X number of differences that have to occur according to the evolutionists. According to the evolutionary timescale, you have X number of changes that have to occur, and we're talking about human-chimp divergence or, some other thing, bacteria going to eukaryotes, whatever, right? You have some time frame, and you don't have enough time, according to this problem, to accumulate the sufficient number of mutations. And so let's go right into this video from Dr. Rob Carter, and we're going to see a bunch of problems where they go through, and he lays out this argument. And to his credit, he lays it out quantitatively. So we actually have numbers, we can talk about the numbers, and we can see why the numbers are wrong. So let's go through this. I have it started right where we want to start. And before I hit play, because I'm bad at this stuff sometimes, so if you cannot hear the Carter video, just let me know in the chat so I can catch that and try to fix it. So without further ado, let's hear what Rob Carter has to say. I think we're going to catch him like mid-sentence here. Just ignore that. It's kind of the thought he starts is what we want to focus on here.
Using Mendel's accountant. So here's what they did. They said, we're going to start with a population of 10,000 individuals. And we're going to wait for a single letter to change. There's an A, and we want to change to a G. How long will that take? Well, you don't actually need a mathematical model to do that or a computer model to do that because we know the basic mutation rate. Under a lot of simplifying assumptions, the mutation rate is, they usually say it's like 1 times 10 to the negative 8. Negative 8, what does that even mean? Okay, math. 10 to the 6th is a million. 10 to the 8th is 100 million. 10 to the negative 8 is 1 over 100 million. In other words, in any stretch of 100 million letters, there'll be about 1 mutation there per year or sometimes per generation, depending on how much you're talking about. So let's talk in generations, because evolution doesn't care about years. It only cares about generations.
That's the first place we have to stop.
Because can I mention something first?
Please do.
When he started there, he was like on this like, oh, we want to change this letter to this letter, and evolution doesn't work on that though. It doesn't care what layer you end up with for the mutation, because that no goals.
Yeah, no. So right away, right, he's framing it as a goal-oriented process, which is not the case, right? So that's first.
And he's treating his audience like 5-year-olds who can't understand scientific notation, which is always fun.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we know that the audience is a non-scientific audience, so I think we can kind of let that
All
one go.
right.
It's not, you're going for a non-scientific audience, so I think I understand where he's coming from.
The simple folk of the West.
So the big thing that jumped out at me in there is that it was right at the end there. Did you catch it? What he said at the end? He says you can do the mutation rate, and what he's really talking about is substitution rate, because we're talking about the rate at which changes accumulate. So he says mutation rate, but what he means is substitution rate, and that's important because the units are different. Mutation rate is the error rate per replication, right? So you have X errors at whatever frequency per replication event. Every time you copy your DNA, what's the frequency of errors? That's the mutation rate. The substitution rate is, and this is the important one, the substitution rate is substitutions per site per year. Now he says, let's talk generations, because evolution doesn't care about years. It only cares about generations. The problem is all the math that you're going to use to do this, and the math that creationists will use to say, oh, the rate is too slow, these are all substitution rates in per year units, not per generation. So if the the substitution rate that creationists are going to use in their math to say that the rate is too slow is per year, but we have Dr. Rob Carter here saying we're going to consider it per generation, we are now already, right off the bat, we are off by a factor of whatever generation time he uses, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so he's not
glaring error.
So he's not correcting for that. He's not saying like, well, if we have a 30-year generation time, I'm just going to multiply this rate by 30.
Right. He's going by the rate and saying whatever year generation time. So that's a great segue. Let me just jump ahead right to about 7 minutes, because he doesn't say at that point what the generation time is that he's using, but he does later on.
100,000 generations. That's when that will appear. Generation time is about 30 years. That's about 3 million.
Oh, hey, I guessed it.
There you go.
There you go.
It's almost like you prepped by watching this ahead of time.
Well, I didn't remember that exact number. Like, I did prep this to see, like, do I have any initial thoughts? And I did. But, like, I watched it the day you linked it in our group chat, and then I completely cut it out of my mind.
So he says we're operating on generations rather than years, and we're using a 30-year generation time. Well, the substitution rates that are going to underlie any waiting time problem math that creationists are going to do, substitution rates are, the units for that are substitutions per site per year. So if he's using those substitution rates, but he's applying them to generations and using 30-year generations, right away his rate is 30 times too slow, right off the bat. So
unless in his math he actually just multiplies it by 30, which do we know if he does or not?
He doesn't do enough math to know one way or the other.
Aha! Because he's not showing his work, huh?
Right, we're not going to get that degree of math, but like he says per generation, but the numbers that you would use to do that, they're substitution rates, and the 1 times 10 to the minus 8, that's a substitution rate, right?
Okay.
So it's he's using the wrong units. It's like that's a glaring error right off the bat. So off to a great start, I guess. Is it coincidence? No, the clocks are on purpose because it's the waiting time problem. It's like molecular clocks and stuff. Yeah, that's on purpose.
I can appreciate the joke. It's not a good joke, but I can appreciate it.
It does look like a nice clock shop.
It does look nice.
Yeah.
And, as far as the bad jokes go, like as a proprietor of terrible jokes,
yes,
respect the hustle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead to about 9 minutes and 40 seconds here because we're going to hit 2 really big problems right one after the other here. So see if you can catch both of them, everybody. This is a play along, for the audience. Let's see if we can catch both glaring errors right off the bat here. This is a very short segment.
Most of those are lost. That's irrelevant. Then you have the waiting time to that lucky one that doesn't go away. But that's not the waiting time. The waiting time is how long does it take that mutation to spread throughout the population and replace the original variant. That's the waiting time. Population geneticists talk about something called fixation or fixity. And this is hard because we don't use that word fix like we used to use it. In fact, we use it as repair. What they mean is stuck, as in fixed in place, immovable, can't change anymore.
Okay, so just terminology for everybody before we get to the fun part here, because that was like 35 seconds, and there were 2 giant errors right in there. But just terminology. So we talk about mutations. We say that a mutation is fixed in the population when all of the alleles at a particular locus have that mutation, right? When all the alleles have a specific thing, right? Or if you want to talk at the genotype level, when all the alleles are the same for a particular locus, we say that allele is fixed in the population. So now we have 2 glaring errors here, and I wonder if the audience figured it out. I bet some people have. And TDLane, Dapper Dino, David, what you got?
So the first thing I notice is that you do not have to wait for a mutation to fix in order to get a subsequent mutation on the same allele that affects fitness.
Bingo.
Why would you have to wait for that? That's just stupid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed a big error, and he seems again to want to say that evolution is a linear process, which we know it isn't.
That's the other one.
And so, again, he seems to have an end goal in sight that we want to get A and change it to a G. But, of course, we know that's not how it happens.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are the 2 errors.
And I want to point out my level of genetics information is very barely above high school graduate.
Same.
And it's that obvious to me. I'm just like, what? Why would you think that?
It's like...
So, go ahead.
It's like he's intentionally misrepresenting this to make creationism look better because he knows it isn't tenable if he doesn't.
Now, it seems also one thing that I'm noticing is that he seems to think that every trait has a specific allele that we have to wait for in order to get. That's what I'm kind of getting at, correct?
Yep. So the two problems here in the order they appear are: 1, the mutations have to appear one at a time in sequence, right? That's not true. you have a population of organisms, right? Individuals. The individuals are experiencing mutations all at different times. Somebody over there gets one mutation, somebody over there gets a different mutation. You're not waiting to have mutation number 1, and then mutation number 2, and then mutation number 3, right? In order, right? It's not everyone just kind of waiting around, like tapping their feet and checking their watch while one mutation occurs, and then it's somebody else's turn, right?
Dan, I have
Everybody's
a question.
mutating.
Dan,
Right,
I have
and
a question.
also, one point that I want to note is that he's, from what I understand, from what I'm getting out of it, he seems to be saying that these mutations happen on an individual level and not a population. Because if we have a population of 10,000, more than one individual is going to get the same mutation, more than likely.
And we are going to get to that problem later on.
Yeah.
That is another problem that we are going to get to.
Dan, I have a question.
TDLane, go ahead.
Tell me, how do mutations get fixed in the population?
Oh, it depends. Could be selection, could be drift.
Yeah, but what needs to happen for the mutation to spread throughout the population?
Reproduction.
What happens during reproduction?
Oh, I think I know what word you're going for. Does it start with an R and end in ombination?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Gee, I wonder, do more mutations pop up? Because
we're going to get to that soon. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that because he says stuff about that. We're going to get to that. And I'll bring up what he says at the beginning of the video when we get there, but he really throws there's a real stinker that comes out a little bit later on that exact point. So the first error is that they have to occur in sequence one at a time. The second error is what Dapper Dino identified, is that you need to have fixation of mutation number 1 before mutation number 2. I said that wrong. It's I missed I know. I'm doing this we're doing it live, people. Give me a break. So you have to have fixation, even if you assume it's a linear process. It's combination. All right. Even if you assume it's a linear process, you don't need to have fixation of mutation number 1 before mutation number 2 appears. And by the way, technically I said it right because it does start with R and end with ombination. I just didn't say the whole word. Like, come on.
Right? That's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Technically it was fine. Oh, you razzing me in the chat. Technically that was fine.
No, that was completely fine.
That was fine.
But as we all know from Futurama, technically correct is the best kind of correct.
It's the best kind of correct. But going back to the point at hand here, what Dapper said is exactly right. You don't need to, even if you assume it has to be one at a time in order, you don't need fixation from number 1 before number 2 appears. As long as in that unrealistic framework, number 2 appears within the lineage that already has number 1, they don't have to fix first, right? It's not mutation, fixation, mutation, fixation. It's mutation, and then somewhere in that lineage with that mutation, you can have the other one, even if it's not fixed yet, right? So, like, you're introducing this requirement that just doesn't exist in nature. So, we're up to 3 glaring errors, and we've only covered cumulative, minute and a half of video. So let's move on to the next problem here. So now we are going all the way to 14 minutes because if we tried to watch this whole thing, we'd be here all night. We're not going to do that. So we're going to jump ahead to 14-ish minutes, right about there. And here is an interesting one.
Biology, those are the things that waiting time has to explain. So let's say that this exists. Somewhere in the genome is an enzyme that requires 2 mutations at the same time to have some improved function.
Oh, stop right there.
Stop right there.
That seems to be, I'm getting some irreducible complexity there.
He does allude to it, but it's not central to the argument.
Right. I just want to point out that this is kind of alluding to the whole Michael Behe irreducible complexity. I just wanted to point that out.
Yep.
I have a thing on that.
Go ahead, and then we're going to keep going with the video.
Can't you just have a neutral mutation and then have another mutation later that makes it all beneficial?
Yeah, you can. You can have epistasis. Yep, you sure can, and that changes the math here, and you will be shocked to learn that that is not considered at any point in this video. Let us continue.
For 2-letter changes, you're talking about 84 million years, not 1.5 million years. If you need 3, you're talking about 380 million years. 5, 2 billion years. If you want 8 changes, you're talking about something older than the Big Bang age of the universe. This is why the waiting time is so profound, because the numbers are telling us that it's not actually going to happen in evolutionary history.
I have a thing on this.
Yeah,
we can literally observe mutation fixation right now. It is not this slow.
Yeah, by the way, I just really need to get this off my chest real quick. I think there's an even bigger problem that all of us are kind of overlooking, and that is that this argument completely refutes young Earth creationism. It completely is a self-refuting argument, because young Earth creationists want to believe that there's a global flood that wipes out 2 of every, except for 2 members of an individual kind, and that somehow they repopulated and diversified through hyper-evolution in less than 180 years. And he's saying we have a waiting time problem. Well, if there is a waiting time problem, well, then what does that mean for young Earth creationism? I did a little bit of math on this waiting time problem, and I'll just share it with you guys real quick. I did a little bit of a calculation on extant species, not taking into account the extinct species. Total, we have about 984,600 extant species. So if we were to calculate them, let's say we had 350 years after the flood is the time of Abraham. All of this biodiversity has to be squeezed into this 350-year window. So if we could do just a couple divisions, that's about 7 new species per day that has to arise. And that's being generous. That's the best case scenario, because we're not taking into account any of the extinct species. So right off the bat, the biggest problem is that this is a completely self-refuting argument.
And does that also include the Ice Age? Because you got to lop off another century for the Ice Age.
So the thing about the Ice Age is, because we have Ice Age fauna that creationists accept as Ice Age from their single Ice Age, we basically need to fit all of the hyperevolution into about 200 years post-flood.
Yeah.
And then it just needs to stop for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it does.
Because special pleading.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Literally just special pleading.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, David. Keep going. Yeah, you got more. Just keep dropping.
All right. I was just going to say, can I have special pleading for $500, Alex?
Rest in peace, Alex Trebek.
Yes.
I'm hoping, is LeVar Burton taken over at some point? I really hope so, because
there's still talk about that, but there's also talk about other people doing it, so it's not
so fair. Obviously the right. This is off topic, but that is so obviously the right person to do it. Like, come on, just have like. Why are we even talking like things that are not debatable? LeVar Burton should be the new host of Jeopardy. Anyway, so the other thing, and it's subtle the way he argues this here, because he's saying you need multiple mutations within a single protein, right? Single enzyme, he phrases it. Now, the interesting thing here is that this compounds upon the problems we've identified before, that they have to occur in sequence, and that he claims they have to occur in sequence, and one has to fix before the other one occurs. Now, let's put those aside. Let's give him a pass on those and say, okay, we're not assuming those incorrect things. What he's saying here, describing the time it would take to get to however many mutations you would need, he's assuming, and again, we're treating these as beneficial mutations, so they're going to be subject to selection. They're not just going to drift to fixation. He is assuming that you can only select for one mutation at a time. That is wrong, because selection does not operate on nucleotides. Selection operates on genomes. So if you have a genome that has more than one mutation in it, you are going to simultaneously change the frequency of both of those mutations. Now, it may not change at the same frequency, because diploid sexual populations, recombination, but if the 2 mutations are linked and they are not separated by recombination, then you are going to increase or decrease the frequency of those 2 things simultaneously, 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 or however many there are.
But Dan,
so treating it as a single thing, but what?
That makes the math harder?
Well, it also makes the math not work for creationists, right? Because all of a sudden your
In
84
in the 80s,
years become not that.
How dare you import actual real-world phenomena into our nice, tidy model that proves science wrong?
Yep.
Yeah,
By the way,
how dare
Atheist
you.
Jr. just pointed out another error. The argument ignores the parallel nature of evolution.
Yep, which we're gonna get to. Oh, don't worry, because it's there's a humorous thing from the top of this video that Carter says, and then at the end he pretends he never said that. So we're gonna get there. I think we're gonna get there soon, actually. So first thing we're gonna do is right here we're gonna jump up just a little bit to about 1540-ish. We're gonna jump right about to here. Because here you go.
In much shorter time frames. They don't have 40 million years to explain the difference between humans and chimpanzees. We only have 6 or 7 million years at most. And even that has doubled since I was in college. It used to be 3 million years. It used to be less than that. But they keep on bumping up the number to try to account for the evolutionary differences that they see. And yet even then...
Okay, first of all, no. The number changes because we learn things.
Yeah.
We find more fossils. We are able to more accurately reconstruct the evolutionary history. So that's first. I hate that. Oh, they're just changing it to
Yeah,
no.
it's the creationist projection of their lack of willingness to adapt to new data and putting that fault of theirs and recasting science's virtue of being willing to say, oh, hey, we got it wrong the first time, let's fix it, and casting that as a vice.
Yeah.
It's a completely backwards idea.
So that's the first problem here.
Think about this. Imagine if economists, when they made models about how the economy is going to work, and they said, no, this data's wrong. It won't go like this. Imagine if they did that.
I don't have to imagine
it. Yeah, they do occasionally.
I mean, economists are really bad at adapting to new data. It's really painful, actually.
Yeah, but no, think about how if the economy didn't adapt to changing circumstances, creationists don't.
Yeah. Okay, let us continue.
Yeah, that broke down.
Oh wait, I was trying to unpause the video in the StreamYard window, not the YouTube window. That was never.
The waiting time problem presents a profound mathematical challenge. I don't believe that they can do it if we stick to the real argument. Not bacteria, not gene promoters, but specific letters. Now,
okay, I just want to highlight that's the thing that I alluded to that he says, and then later on he's going to say something that's the opposite of that. He says, not bacteria, we're focusing on humans. That's what we have to focus on. Okay, so I just want to stick a pin in that. We'll come back to it.
Oh yeah, so basically he's arguing that somehow bacteria and probably to that extent viruses aren't affected by that, but it's because they have very short generation periods and very fast mutation rates.
I think what he's alluding to is that we can observe very rapid adaptation in experimental prokaryotic populations, and that doesn't count because humans are not bacteria and are different. He doesn't go into more detail than that. He just kind of says, keep it to humans. So, okay, sir, let's keep it to humans.
Granted, evolution is supposed to be random. So what if that letter change happened? What if another letter change could have happened? And there are, 20-something thousand genes. So maybe you don't need that letter change. Maybe you need any number of 50 to 100 to 1,000 specific letter changes to happen to drive the evolution of humans. And you have 20,000 different genes to work with. Okay, we can talk about that too. We can model that also. And it doesn't work.
Okay, there's one big thing here that if you're not really steeped in this, you probably missed it. But there's one giant glaring error here, because he says, you know what? We have all these genes. We have millions of differences between humans and chimps. So maybe let's make it easy for the evolutionists, right? You don't need all 3 million, right? Most of those might not do anything. Maybe you only need what does he say? 50 to 100,000 specific mutations. 50 to 100,000 specific mutations. That's all you need since the divergence with chimps in order to accumulate the differences required to make humans different from our common ancestor with chimps. I don't know where he got that number, but we have a real number for that.
By the way, you got a super chat in the from Mr. Archaeopteryx.
Thank you. I didn't even notice. Thank you, Neff. I appreciate you calling that out. Yes, thank you. That was $4.99. Keep debunking these clowns from Mr. Archaeopteryx. Thank you. I appreciate your generosity. And we will. So there's actually research on what this number is. He says 50 to 100,000. Like, okay, the actual number, there's been a couple studies on this. The methodologies differ slightly, so you get a range, which is, appropriate. The range is between so they looked at a subset of genes, so you have to kind of expand it proportionally to about 20,000 genes. And then you also have to consider that they're only looking at protein coding genes rather than regulatory sequences. So what you get is between 200 and 800 mutations. And that's for your 20,000 genes. And then if you double that to include regulatory mutations, which is unrealistic because regulatory sequences are far smaller percentage of the genome compared to protein coding sequences, which are already very small percentage. But let's be generous to the creationists here and double it. You only end up at like 1,600 mutations. Now, we can be even more generous to creationists and round that up to 2,000 mutations that we can document that have been selected for between the divergence with the chimp lineage and modern humans. 2,000 as a gross overestimate. That is 1/25th of the low end of the range that Carter says here. So consider how this math is working. Put aside the mechanistic problems with like one mutation at a time and yada, 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 right? We started with an error that was an order of magnitude that was off by 30 times, right? Now we have another error, compounding error, that's off by 25 times. So right away, we have just on those 2 points alone, Carter's math is going to be an overestimate in the time required by 750 times.
I mean, hey, compared to the average young Earth creationist error, that's pretty small.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Yeah, okay.
I'm not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. They're
usually around 5 orders of magnitude off. Now they're only 3.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. What can I say? That's a fair point.
It's sad that it's a fair point, but
it's a good point. Yeah, they're only off by about 3 orders of magnitude here. Well, okay, off by 3 orders of magnitude on 2 of the points we've talked about, and then you have to include all the other ones too. So we
are closer to 4 or 5.
The ones that are he's on the 2 points that are quantifiable, he's off by 750 times, right? So then there's the ones that are not quantifiable, right? The in sequence that has to reach fixation, right? It's hard to quantify those based on what we're hearing from Dr. Carter here. But so the baseline error is an overestimate by a factor of 750. And then
so his original estimate was, he said that it would take how long for humans and chimpanzees to diverge according to his model?
I think he said something like 4 billion years or something. Like he went like he goes, yeah. I don't think I showed the part where he actually provides the number, but it's a lot. He gives like, if it's this many mutations, it's this, and then he later on says something like, I don't know where it is. I don't have it noted. Sorry. But
so when you divide that by 750, you get 5 1/3 million, which is in line with current estimates. Weird.
Wow.
Yeah, by the way, I do want to just say that real quick. There are more differences between the cat kind than there are between humans and chimpanzees. So it will be So it will be very interesting for someone to actually sit down and do the math from Dr. Carter's methodology and numbers, apply that to the cats, and see how long it's going to take for them to diverge from each other. Because that'll be a lot of fun to kind of compare and contrast.
Creationists won't do it.
Along those lines, we could do a whole other video on this video and how it contradicts with other creationist arguments, because some of the claims, I skipped over them because we're focusing on waiting time problem tonight, but just to give everybody just an insight into it. Earlier on, he talks about how, well, you have this, 1 in 100 million, and if you do the math on that for a 6 billion base pair diploid genome, that works out to about 60 mutations per generation. Now, he then goes on to say, but it's worse than that because you have selection and drift, so most of those don't persist in the population. Most of those mutations get lost from the population, so it takes even longer than those. We lost David Neff. Hopefully he'll be
I'm
back.
going to guess that he closed the wrong tab again.
I think he did that probably. So hopefully David will be back in just a moment. So what he's saying is we have 60 mutations per generation, and most of those don't persist within the population because of natural selection and genetic drift. That contradicts another prominent argument that Dr. Carter and some of his colleagues are very fond of making, a little something you may have heard of called genetic entropy, where they say there's 100 mutations per generation and you can't get rid of any of them, and they accumulate in an approximately linear fashion, generation after generation after generation. So those two arguments are 100% contradictory with each other. And we could spend half an hour just picking apart that part of the video when he talks about that stuff. We're not going to, but we could.
It's almost like creationism isn't based on a single coherent model.
Almost
it isn't.
So let's get to this last little bit I want to play, which is, let's see, it's about a minute and it's almost 2 minutes long actually, but I want to play through this whole thing because it's just a beautiful contradiction with something we heard Dr. Carter say just a couple of minutes ago in the video, in a previous clip we played, because he said, remember, we don't want to talk about bacteria, we want to focus on humans. And for everyone watching, humans, we are diploid and we do sexual recombination. Okay, so we are diploid sexual populations in contrast with bacteria, which are haploid asexual populations. So let's see how this goes.
Because if a letter appears in some gene that gives it some selective advantage, great. Well, that's going to take a long time to propagate. You need another one to appear at the same time. That's going to take a long time to propagate. They're going to be interfering with one another. There's only so many babies that humans can have. Human females can't have 800 children.
Well, why are they interfering? Because they're not recombining? Is that why?
We'll get there. We're gonna just we're gonna get there. Don't worry.
Children, 798 of them get removed for natural selection purposes. That's not the way it works. We have a little more than 2 per generation. That's normal. That's
actually a pretty low estimate for most of human history.
Because that
Can
means
we
that
pause
there
this,
aren't a
please,
lot of extra.
on that? Aren't these the people that say that the human population was literally doubling every 30 years?
Yeah, he's saying right here that we reproduce approximately on average at the level of replacement, but I mean, I got population growth charts that show that that's not true.
Right.
Yeah, no, you don't grow. If you're only replacement rate, then you're not going to grow your population.
Look, so within my family, right? You go back a generation, you get to a point where someone had 12 kids, and that person who had 12 kids was one of 13. A bit over 2 is not a good estimate for most of human history. It's not even a good estimate for current human history. It's a good estimate for the United States and most of Western Europe.
Yeah, it's good for Western Europe over the past 80 to 100 years.
It definitely doesn't work for history. And they need it not to. They need people to be popping out kids like crazy after the arc.
It's such a
Gotta get them pyramids built.
Clean view of history that you literally just have to sit through a middle school history class to deal with. Because here in America, we talk about how they used to have like 8-9 kids because most of them would die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Let us continue because there's more here. There's more.
For children to remove. You can't have 20, 100, 1,000 different genes, different advantageous mutations all clamoring for attention. What happens is the selective process bogs down in something called selective interference. And that's another big issue for the waiting time problem. In that, okay, you want random mutations? Okay, let's just say that random mutations with a 10% reproductive advantage happen at random, and anywhere it happens, that is going to be selectable. Great. You can only get 1 or 2, maybe 3. And Haldane's estimate, a few hundred to a few thousand.
Oh, goodness.
I think his estimate is way.
Yeah, I know. Haldane's dilemma. I know. Yeah.
But does the audience know? Okay, so Haldane's dilemma, first of all, it doesn't apply to sexually reproducing organisms. It's only for asexual organisms. And second, it's been not a dilemma since like the 60s. It's a nothing. There's nothing there. Even if it were something, it wouldn't apply to humans, which is what we're supposed to be focusing on. So are we focusing on bacteria or are we focusing on humans there, buddy?
Yeah, and by the way, if you want to get a really good video about Haldane's dilemma, go to Pelagia's channel where Dr. Dan, I think, did a video on that with him. So make sure you go over to Pelagia's channel and check that video out.
Thank you for the plug. That is, in fact, a thing that happened. I did do a video on that with Pelagia. So,
and now that you've plugged, now that Pelagia has been plugged on your channel, he's going to get a good, 18 or so subscribers.
Yeah, right? He's going to get
Nice.
at least 18. He'll get 3 if he's lucky out of this. The joke, for anyone not familiar with it, is after I guested on Pelagia, my subscriber count basically tripled in 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's why you can send super chats.
That's right. So, we're almost done with this segment, so let's get through this, and then we'll...
Okay. Is it going to make my brain explode?
And then I'm holding it back. I'm going to be indignant once we finish this this segment because come on.
Way over the top. But you can't get that many changes even in evolutionary time. Therefore, evolutionary mathematics tells us that evolution doesn't work. That, my friends, is the waiting time problem.
Okay. Here's the thing.
This is stupider than I remember.
I think this would actually be worse than genetic entropy.
He starts off, remember, we basically just played those last 2 clips we played were basically back to back. So we've now gone through about 3.5 minutes straight, right? And he started those 3.5 minutes by saying, look, people will use bacteria to say this isn't a problem. We don't want to talk about bacteria. We're going to focus on people and how human populations work. He then goes on to describe a problem, Haldane's dilemma, and another problem that he calls selective interference. Another word for that is clonal interference. And these problems are limited to asexual populations because what the problem that he's identifying here is that if you have mutation A and you have mutation B in separate subsets of a population and you cannot recombine, then those 2 subsets will compete with each other. One of them will outcompete the other, that mutation will fix, and then the other mutation has to occur. But we are diploid organisms that do sexual recombination. So you have the kids from the lineage where mutation A occurs, you have the descendants from where mutation B occurs, they mate with each other, you have recombination, and now A and B appear in the same lineage without having to compete with each other, and for one of those mutations to happen a second time. That's what sexual recombination does. And if we're going to start a segment by saying we need to focus on humans, not bacteria, you can't turn around and then treat humans as asexual haploids.
Dan, this man is a geneticist, right?
He's a marine biologist by trade.
Okay. I know. All right. I know he's worked with genetics before, but he knows that this is wrong, right?
I don't know.
If he studied biology, he has to. I can't imagine him not knowing this is just wrong. The genomes of both parents going into the offspring and sexually reproducing organisms, humans, is common knowledge. The only way I can think he can possibly make this is just through outright misrepresentation, because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. So that's Rob Carter on the waiting time problem. We identified, I'm just going to go through real quick and summarize the six. There are 6 major problems that I picked out in here, and then each of you picked out other problems. So here are the 6 that I got. He says he uses substitutions per generation instead of per year, which is an error that makes his numbers wrong by a factor of 30. He says that the mutations must occur in sequence. It's actually a parallel process. He says that mutation, they have to fix in sequence, not just occur. That's not true, even if you assume they have to occur in sequence. He says you can only have selection for one mutation at a time. That's wrong. If a genome experiences multiple mutations, they're going to rise and fall together, especially if they're linked. He says that there are 50 to 100,000 selected beneficial mutations from our divergence from the common ancestor with chimps. The correct number is less than 2,000, so that is an error of a factor of 25 times right there. And finally, you can only select for one mutation in a population at a time due to clonal interference. That treats humans like asexual haploids, not sexual diploids. Those are 6 major errors that I plucked out of this. And let's do one more round for each of you and just give me anything else you got before we move on to the paper from the DI people.
I mean, I think you covered everything I said, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, as I mentioned earlier, is that it refutes in Earth creationism. And I also noticed that it also contradicts a number of creationist assertions, such as inbreeding leads to rapid evolution somehow. In context
that doesn't work. Inbreeding doesn't increase
I know.
mutation rate. That's just wrong. That doesn't make any sense.
His tripod isn't sufficiently secured in place, and he seems not to have a forward-facing screen so that he can see his own framing. But those aren't really problems with the argument so much as the video production.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to take this screen down because now we're going to change gears and we are going to talk about a paper that, as I said, I don't know one of the first author, but the other 2 authors are both DI-affiliated people. So let me pull that up real fast so I can get rid of this, and we'll pull this one up. Now, this paper has a lot of math in it, and I promise, we're not going to evaluate the math. I swear, we're not going to do it.
But I have my calculator.
So what we're going to do is, let me go through the share screen thing again. It's this one. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is this paper on the waiting time until coordinated mutations get fixed in regulatory sequences by, I don't know how to pronounce that. Dapper, you could probably pronounce that. I'm going with Hoster, but that's wrong.
I think it's more like Hostier.
Hostier, yes. Thank you. And then Beckley and Gauger, I don't know how to say her name either.
Gauger sounds pretty close.
It's not good. Okay, so this paper is, and you can see Beckley and Gauger, they're both Biologic Institute, which is Discovery Institute affiliated, if I have that correct. So just real quick, if we're not going to evaluate the math in this paper because we don't have to. So we're just going to look at a couple very simple glaring errors. I'm going to zoom in so we can actually read what we're saying here. Yeah. So this is from the abstract, but we're just going to show it to illustrate the point. It is further assumed that the mutation rate is small enough to warrant a fixed state population so that all individuals have the same regulatory array at any given time point until the next successful mutation arrives in some individuals and spreads to the rest of the population.
Why?
So
why would you assume that?
That is making the exact same error that Carter made, that it's mutation, fixation in sequence. That's not how this works.
That's just dumb. How did this get published? Is this a real journal?
This is a real journal, but this is where a lot of bad stuff gets published, honestly.
Oh, so it's the real journal for bad science, huh?
It's the Journal of Theoretical Biology, which is a lot of mediocre stuff gets through here because, again, it's theoretical. So some of it's supposed to be speculative, but you also get shoddy math or shoddy theory with legit math. So you have a paper like this with a lot of math. Oftentimes the reviewers will be math people. So they'll review the math and be like, yep, that works, but they won't consider the underlying evolutionary aspects to it.
Right. Did you actually make reasonable assumptions to base your math on?
Yeah.
Because if you don't constrain your assumptions...
It's thank you, RJ. It rhymes with major, so gauger.
Yeah.
And gauger. Thank you.
Anyway,
I appreciate that correction.
Just to point everything out, the Journal of Theoretical Biology has an impact factor of only 2.327. So that's a pretty.
That's something I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what impact factors are, but I don't have a scale in my head for what is a lot and what is not. But I'm assuming that's low.
It is.
Yeah. By contrast, Nature has an impact factor of 42.778.
Okay, yeah, so that's...
I'm going to take a guess this is on a scale of 0 to 100.
Okay. So you hop down to the discussion here, and they reiterate the same thing. assuming that the population is small enough to warrant blah, 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 individuals have approximately the same regulatory sequences, right? So they're assuming that it's constant, and then a mutation occurs, and then it fixes, then a mutation occurs, right? And we already talked about why that's wrong. And then I want to hop down here, because the first thing I did with this paper is I hit Control F, and I typed in recombination. And there was one sentence that mentioned recombination, and here it is. It is reasonable then to believe that recombination between two parental regulatory sequences can be ignored, since both of them are well approximated by the corresponding consensus regulatory sequence.
What?
What?
So we're just
going to hand wave it again.
We're just going to ignore recombination. We're going to talk about if you get mutation A, you get mutation B, how long does it take for them to appear linked together? And we're going to ignore recombination when asking that question. Okay. And that's all I got for this paper. You don't need to go further than that. They ignore recombination.
Yeah.
Nothing matters at that point. And we talked earlier about, contrasting a bacterial population with a human population. Prokaryotic populations do recombination. They don't do sexual reproduction. They don't do meiosis. But they do have mechanisms for recombination. They have transformation. They have transduction. They have conjugation. So you can't even approximate a prokaryotic population if you're ignoring recombination.
Yeah, but then, Dan, if you're right, then this creationist argument is wrong, and we can't have that.
Yeah.
So I think you're misunderstanding the way that we're supposed to approach science, which is supposed to be that we have a conclusion, and then we massage the data until it fits that conclusion.
If we flex on the data enough, it will be right.
So I don't have anything to add for this paper. If any of the three of you would like to add something else to it, if any of you, dare I hope, read the math, and you want to comment, but I didn't go into the math. I looked at the evolution, and the evolution is shoddy. They make two completely awful assumptions that underlie the whole thing.
Once your assumptions that go into your calculations are off, no matter how well you do the math, it doesn't give you something that's applicable to the real world, right?
Yeah,
like if I assume that the tensile strength of steel is 18 trillion times stronger than it is, when I go to design a bridge, it's going to fall apart no matter how good my math is.
No.
I mean, what are you going to do?
All right. So that being said, let's wrap this up. So that's the waiting time problem, everybody. At some point, I'm going to I'll do a creation myth on this. But for now, because you had two separate groups of creationists putting out works on this within a couple of weeks of each other, I felt like this was an appropriate time to, actually examine them, like the primary sources, and like really look into specific cases and see if they hold up to scrutiny. Obviously, with the just abundant, shoddy, incorrect assumptions underlying both arguments, none of this works out. Yeah. So with that, we can wrap this up, and we'll go around the horn and see if anybody has any upcoming stuff they want to plug before we pull the plug. TDLane, anything interesting going on in the near future?
I'm going to be not really doing much. No, I thought about it. I'm like, do I have stuff I am going?
We'll come hang out, do things like this, and that's always fun.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
David, do you have anything on the horizon?
Yes, so not sure exactly when, but Jordan is going to be on my channel, Jordan from Reason to Doubt, and he and I are going to be talking about one of my favorite things, which is nuclear power, separating the myths from the facts, and why everyone should support nuclear power. So that'll be a lot of fun. Again, not sure when that is going to be, but that is going to be a thing. And I am trying to get more interviews set up, so if anyone wants to come on my channel to have a little bit of conversation or whatever, please hit me up.
Awesome. And Dapper Dino, you always have a full schedule. What do you have coming down the pike?
I do. So Saturday is going to be a discussion on whether or not birds are dinosaurs with a creationist who came into my comments, and for the first time ever in years of creationists trolling through my comments, I actually said, hey, you want to come on and discuss this? And he said yes, and he emailed me, and we set up a time to meet and talk about it. So that's going to be Saturday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what time that is if you're in Europe. So then Tuesday should be another Kent with Bent. Then Thursday is probably going to be part 2 of my IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet series. Then the Saturday following that should be the wrap-up to my Spirit Science history streams, followed by another Kent with Bent, followed by part 2 of Young Earth Creationism from Canada series. So there you go.
Yep. Also, one other thing that I forgot to mention, I am working on a series on accelerated Christian education and the monstrosity that this comic book curriculum is. So that is something to look forward to. Maybe Dapper Dino, when you want to host it, and we can do like a live stream dissecting. I
would certainly be interested in taking a look at that and seeing if that's something that would be a good thing to host. So yeah, let me know when you're ready and what you've got. And also, I think Benthoven may have spent a school year using that education system.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much ready whenever you are. Dr. Dan, I know you spoke that you said something that you might want to buy one of those pieces. Did you ever buy one of them?
I haven't tracked one down yet, but I'm looking into it. I might want to grab one of those. I probably wouldn't participate in the stream because I have no experience with any of it, but I would love to get my hands on some of those materials and dig into them.
You don't really have to have any experience, just these claims are bad, this is wrong. Okay, let's talk about it and show why it's wrong. And you don't even get off the first page without them touting the first foundational falsehood of creationism. So it is bad. It is really, really, really bad.
All right, so that'll be a fun series. So what I have coming up is I've been really trying super hard to stick to this once a week thing, and I've been mostly hitting it. This week has been a twofer. For those of you that missed it, I debated Kent Hovind last night on Modern Day Debate on the topic of the Ark, and if you missed that one, let me tell you, that was a hoot. That conversation was something else.
Dan, the heat problem doesn't exist because air circulates.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I am so glad that someone finally called him Mr. Kent Hovind to his face and said, stop calling yourself a doctor. You're lying.
I love how he said, that's an ad hominem. You didn't say he was wrong because...
I didn't say you were wrong because of it. I just said you're not a doctor. I didn't say therefore you're wrong.
Yeah. By the way, Dr. Dan, you're actually telling me that when I go do my undergrad dissertation that I shouldn't start my thing with, hello, my name is David Neff. You're telling me I should...
don't start your thesis that way. Don't do that.
I think that would be instant. Get out.
Are you saying you should start with like a thesis statement or something like that?
You probably want to start with like a statement of purpose or something. So we did Kent last night. I'm gonna put that up on my channel as a premiere at some point, so we can all relive that and I can watch it, and because it's a different experience watching it compared to doing it. So I'm excited to relive that one at some point in the near future. And then next week, this time, this place, I am talking to Sal Cordova. We are going to talk phylogenetics, and I'm really excited for that. So that will be that's next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'll have Sal on here. For those of you who don't know Sal, Young Earth Creationist, he has his channel. I want to say Evidence and Reasons. I think.
Yes. Yep. I think it's Evidence and Reason.
Evidence and Reason, and he's going to be joining me. We're going to talk about phylogenetics. We're going to talk about we're not going to get into like the math necessarily, but we're going to talk about the principles of phylogenetics, how to read a phylogenetic tree, terms like synapomorphy and what that means and why it's relevant. So we're going to dig into phylogenetics and what it can and can't tell us. So that's going to be I think it's going to be super fun. So that's next Thursday at 9 right here. And with that, I am going to...
One more thing I want to plug in. Sorry. If you haven't watched it already, on my channel, 2 weeks ago, I did a hangout with Dr. Dan. We talked about vaccines, virology, and all sorts of fun stuff. So you totally should come to my channel and watch that video. And
get vaccinated, everybody.
Yep, get vaccinated. Vaccines save lives.
Get vaccinated. Do it.
Yep.
Don't be a sociopath. Do it for everybody, not just you.
Yep. Don't be selfish.
Or, hey, you know what? No, fine. Do it just for you. I don't care as long as you do it.
That's fine. Be selfish. Do it for you too. I don't know. Do it to own the libs. Like, whatever. Just get vaccinated.
Yeah. Have you ever thought that anti-vax stuff is actually just a Russian psyop to weaken the U.S. healthcare infrastructure?
You know what really it is? Big
Okay, I don't want to get the channel. I just got the channel monetized. I don't want to get it demonetized like immediately. So can we? Let's.
Yeah, we'll stop.
Let's
Yeah,
stop
sounds good.
there. All right, that was fun. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to everyone that watched. If you haven't liked and subscribed, come on, nerds, like and subscribe, and share it and everything. I'm almost up to 2,000 subs now, so it'd be really cool if we could do that soon. So thanks everybody. Have a great night, and we'll bust some more creationism down the road. Good night.